Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to the World Over Aftershow. We're discussing Christmas movies with Steven Greydanus. He is the film critic at the National Catholic Register. Thanks for staying with us, Steven.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Let's start with Lincoln.
Yes.
This film is getting a lot of buzz, Golden Globe nominations, SAG nominations. Your thoughts?
It's a beautiful film. Daniel Day-Lewis's personification of our 16th president is definitely a big part of the reason to see the film. But it's not a biopic about Lincoln, and it's not really with him as the central character. It's really the story about the passage of the 13th Amendment, about the struggle in that 1 month to pull together the necessary votes and the closing days of the Civil War. And it gives us a look at a side of politics that we don't often see in the movies. That's one of the things that makes it really fascinating.
The side of politics I see all the time. So I wasn't terribly impressed. The movie is gorgeous, as you said. The performances are extraordinary. Sally Field, Tommy Lee Jones, Daniel Day-Lewis is unbelievable as Lincoln. Here's where the problems come in my opinion. The script is stagey. Tony Kushner he's written Angels in America, a lot of theater. It has a talky, long quality. I thought it bogged down at points and lost interest.
That kind of talky script bothers some people. Other people find it exhilarating. I know that I do. There's another film, The Conspirator, that almost plays as a sequel to this. The story of the trials after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Also very stagey and talky. A Man for All Seasons has been criticized on that front.
I wouldn't compare this to A Man for All Seasons. Okay, but you know, here's my other problem with it. I found it stagey. I found it slow, but more importantly, because of the angle and the prism in which it casts this story.
Yes.
I think it smudges the edges of history and the edges of this story, and it is creating a template, I think, it's on the part of Steven Spielberg or somebody, to create a marching orders, if you will, for the present occupant of the White House. And just like the Robert Redford film you mentioned earlier, The Conspirator, that was about using Mary Surratt's case, the first woman hanged, to suggest that George W. Bush had done horrible things by getting rid of habeas corpus, which is what Lincoln did. Here you have Lincoln as saint, the strong executive who basically moves past the will of the people, turns guns on his own people because he has a higher moral vision. We hear since the release of this film, operatives in the White House, people on Capitol Hill saying, President Obama needs to be like Lincoln. He needs to be strong. He needs to be decisive. The will of the people be damned. I don't like fictional history being used as political catechism.
Okay, so complain about that. Complain about the way that the film is being used. But that's different from a criticism of the film. You know, the roots of this film as a cinema project go back to before the Obama administration. It was inspired by the historical study of Doris Kearns Goodwin. It wasn't written to be about the Obama administration. At any time you have a popular, successful film, people are going to latch onto it and they're going to use it for their own interests. I think that The Conspirator also has been significantly misunderstood, probably because the name Robert Redford is attached to it. This was really a project of the American History Company. Their vision for the film was not a partisan one. And you can.
But that's how it was used, and that's
how it was used. But that's not in the film.
Well,
the film itself is about due process, which has really become a bipartisan issue.
Yeah, but I thought Lincoln was. I mean, the history is. The history is a little fuzzy. If you read Eric Foner's The Fiery Trial, which truly goes through, he won a Pulitzer Prize not for nothing, because it really does sort of explore the evolution of Lincoln on this topic of slavery. And here, it seems as if he always believed slavery should be outlawed from the beginning. Well, read the Lincoln-Douglas debate.
It's a snapshot of one moment in his life. You know, the historical film has not been made, to my knowledge, that historians haven't complained about. Historical films always ignore the bigger picture because they're about what they're about.
Yeah, no, I just found it a little cloying when he's always got the shawl and he's giving benediction to everybody. And when he's not doing that, he's bouncing a baby on his leg. He's like the child care in chief. It was some of it annoyed me.
You can see what kind of film it is right from the first moment when we see him seated on that podium. It looks like he's posing for the Lincoln Memorial.
It looked like great moments with Mr. Lincoln at Disney World, and you've got the two soldiers reciting reciting the Gettysburg Address to him.
Which was really, that's very unhistorical because it wasn't well known until after his death.
Exactly. And let's talk about a film we can 100%, I think, agree on. Skyfall, the James Bond movie.
Yes. Now, I can't talk about any James Bond movies until we talk about Casino Royale, the first Bond film starring Daniel Craig, because it really puts the whole Bond franchise in a completely different light. It's totally lacking in sentimentality. It's totally lacking in nostalgia. And where other films have really romanticized this figure, and we do get a somewhat romanticized figure in terms of his ability and so forth, but we see him for the psychologically flawed individual that he really is, as a very amoral person, a blunt instrument, M calls him.
Right.
In that film, he winds up getting so fried and so used that you think there's no more humanity left. Here we see that M is the last connection to his humanity. There's also significant Catholic themes running through the film.
He's part of this recusant family that
we discover that his family had that history during the Catholic resistance.
But didn't you
priest hole under their manor home.
I would argue in Skyfall you see the reconciliation, if you will, between the James Bond you talked about in the early series, a part of this series anyway, the blunt instrument, with the sort of wisecracking, the nostalgic Bond. It really is a meshing of the two.
That's 100% correct, and that's really what director Sam Mendes brought to the film. We get the gadgets back.
It's fun.
We get some of the jokey stuff back, and that's partly why for me Casino Royale remains the definitive Bond film.
It had a touch of fun that the others didn't have. It had a little tongue-in-cheek at times. And we were in New York recently, and my son were walking down the street. He looks in a movie theater, and he says, "Daddy, I have to run in." I said, "Where are you going?" He runs in. It's Roger Moore at the ticket booth getting a ticket
how
for the
about
movie. And Alex says, "Oh, it was so great to meet you, Mr. Moore." But that sort of
was he going to see Skyfall?
No, he was going to see Anna Karenina, I think, your favorite film. Your film you were talking about earlier. Let's talk about Les Miserables.
Yes.
Should people see it?
Absolutely. It's a popular story. This is the first film version of the stage musical that we've seen. There have been lots of film adaptations before, but it's really the musical that's made this so popular. And as we talked about during the main show, it's a story of redemption that has many layers to it. I was thinking of Thomas Aquinas' description of the final judgment, where we discover how all of the good and bad deeds that we do during our lives that we discover about at our individual judgment, at the final judgment, we see all the repercussions and ramifications that they have throughout history. That's what we see here. The bishop does a very good service to Jean Valjean, and that winds up having redemptive effects for many other people beyond him.
No, I think it's one of the most Catholic films I've seen in the year, and I think it's a pop general audience film that a lot of people will be affected by if they go see it, and they're open to it. But I do think it demands a lot of the audience, though, Steve, to look at an actor in extreme close-up for 3 or 4 minutes as they render a song and really render the song live.
The problem isn't the audience. The problem is that Hollywood has been cynically selling people on such a load of fast food for so long that we've become indifferent to anything that's different. And I do love the whole tradition of stage musicals. If you take children who haven't been hardened yet to a musical, I'm not talking about taking them to see Les Mis necessarily.
There are parts here that are a little
But you can go back and show your children stuff like Singing in the Rain, and they'll watch it when they're 10, when they won't at 16. Something happens between those two ages.
Yeah, no, my kids watch it. They love it. It's a great film. The Hobbit, which I call the unending journey because this thing goes on and on.
My friend Jeff Overstreet called it The Hobbit on steroids.
Well, the steroid, I don't know if the steroids are working, though. This is kind of a little, it's a little story that they just drag out forever and ever. Like you, I think I was really disappointed with this movie.
Well, there are some things about it that work really well, and I want to give credit, first of all, to the
prosthetic noses.
The whole production design is beautiful. You really do feel like you're stepping back into the same Middle-earth that we encountered 10 years ago. Many of the returning actors step right back into their roles, and you feel like you are among friends. Some of the moments in the film are really beautiful. My favorites include the dwarf song about the long-forgotten gold, that moment that we talked about where Bilbo has Gollum at his mercy, the arrival of the eagles, but the battle scenes are so overblown. The action
really over the top.
The action is huge, but the stakes are small, and that's a bad combination.
Yeah, but my producer Chris Edwards saw the movie, and he said he hated those songs. Why do you like those songs? This isn't exactly Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Okay, so
tunes.
I just have to say, as far as the dwarf songs go about the long forgotten gold, everyone is entitled to his opinion. Okay. But if you don't like that song, you're not human.
Oh, oh, well, it's been nice seeing you. It'll be your last appearance on The World Over. Great to see you, Steven Greydanus. We will have you back. I'm kidding, but Chris isn't. He's already off the list. You can follow Steven Greydanus' reviews at decentfilms.com. He puts regular reviews there, and they're worth reading. And all these films are open in time for Christmas. We'll see you next time on The World Over Live.